Hello and welcome to another episode of Reflect as we continue to journey through the book of Revelation. This episode we're going to explore the image of the harvest in the winepress in Revelation 14 verses 14 to 20. So let's take a moment to read that passage first. I looked, and there before me was a white cloud, and seated on the cloud was one like a son of man with a crown of gold on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Then another angel came out of the temple and called in a loud voice to him who was sitting on the cloud, "Take your sickle and reap, because the time to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is ripe." So he who was seated on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. Another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Still another angel, who had charge of the fire, came from the altar and called in a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, "Take your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grapes from the earth's vine, because its grapes are ripe." The angel swung his sickle on the earth, gathered its grapes, and threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. They were trampled in the winepress outside the city, and blood flowed out of the press, rising as high as the horses' bridles for a distance of 1,600 stadia. So this section is one that communicates both God's salvation for those who follow him and judgment on the world for their sin and not turning from it to him. The first hint of this is the idea of Jesus seated on the clouds. This is a common image of judgment in the Near East area around Jerusalem. Though usually the clouds are dark storm clouds, storms being seen as God's judgment. The image here is slightly different in that the clouds are white. These aren't necessarily judgment clouds, but the image is still there. This reminds us the focus is on Jesus and not the clouds themselves. It's also an image directly from Daniel 7, where we read, "In my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days and was led into his presence. He was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and all people of every language worshipped him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed." This image from Daniel is the same image that we encounter Jesus coming on a cloud with. The context of both, salvation and judgment, is that Jesus has all authority and power, and his dominion, his kingdom, is never ending and cannot be destroyed. First, passage we see Jesus with a sickle, and this is for harvesting his followers. This is the image of salvation here. And notice salvation precedes judgment. Jesus will save all that he can. He'll harvest all that he can. The sad part is that there are those who reject God no matter what. So another sickle is seen, but not of salvation, a sickle at harvest for judgment. In this case, the images of grapes being crushed in a winepress of wrath. This passage of judgment shows the complete extent of judgment, with an enormous amount of blood flowing out of the winepress and covering a massive area to quite a depth. It's quite an overwhelming image when we stop and reflect on it, and it should be heartbreaking for us. It's images like this that should motivate us to share the good news so others don't have to go through that judgment. But what's clear is the judgment in this imagery being so comprehensive, so much, is that the judgment of Jesus, the judgment of God, is thorough and complete and extensive. There's no escaping it. Now, thankfully, we also saw the image of salvation. And I'm curious what grabs your attention more, the salvation of Jesus or the judgment? This passage in many ways is a reminder to be a part of the right harvest. As hard as the judgment imagery is, and it should be hard because it's quite an incredible image, it comes in contrast to the extensive harvest of salvation. We're told the whole earth was harvested, while the judgment is contained to this large area in terms of what's left. And I think the imagery we need to see is how extensive salvation is, being the whole earth. And while the judgment is complete and the image is overwhelming, I think the image of salvation is a greater image in this. And that's what we should seek after. So thanks for joining us this week for another Reflect episode, and we hope to see you next time. Take care.